I was married to a spiritual teacher. I thought it might be good for me, you know, like it would be a fast track to open the secrets of the universe or find my higher purpose or quickly clear my karma or at least get a yoga body. It seemed easier and more sensible than flying all the way to India and climbing a mountain and living in a cave. Like, I could have a husband and a teacher rolled into one. I wouldn't even need to get dressed to get enlightened. And I could say, that's Mrs. Guru to you. Being married to an evolved being is a lot of work because their higher purpose is literally to not do all the stuff that needs to be done to be alive. But the best part is that you get to learn things all the time. Like the fact that your desire for him to pick up his socks or earn money is really just your ego seeking control to compensate for your lack of control as a child. Get it? So repeat after me. It's never about the socks on the floor.
Never about the socks.
He told me I needed to learn how to empty myself and just be. He loved expressions like, don't do something, just sit there. I have always had this built-in desire to be a better person myself, so I was a perfect target, wife for him. Now, he was a big meditator, and he also liked to really keep a close eye on whether or not I was meditating. He was just thoughtful that way. And he told me that my monkey mind was particularly crazy. And he liked to remind me that I would need to be still and quiet for a long time, a very long time. And if I could just sit and be still and quiet for a very long time, I would eventually drop the self and become empty. And the goal was to be free of desire. He called it liberation because it's kind of like being dead while you're still alive. And I thought, that sounds kind of fun. And so day after day, year after year, I emptied myself of myself. But this urge to be alive would not go away. I clearly needed to try harder. Sometimes what he called my shadow side, you know, that pathological ugliness that lives inside of all of us, would rear its head, and I would get angry and tell him to do things like vacuum or cook a meal. But he was always on top of his game, and he would suggest that we draw some tarot cards instead to uncover the hidden source of my victim consciousness and my inability to surrender and allow life to just be as it is. Once I asked him to get a job, just a part-time job, so that he could keep being a spiritual teacher and have something steady to rely on. Well, that day I learned that people that have jobs do so because they don't have the courage to leap into the abyss like he did. And one day I might have the same courage to live my higher purpose. So I kept working at it. I became quieter. I became empty. And he helped me by reminding me that the many things I thought I enjoyed, like watching the news while drinking a glass of wine, were really acts of self-sabotage that lowered my vibration so I could avoid my spiritual journey. I knew I was making progress because I eventually surrendered my desire for him to unload the dishwasher, and I was no longer attached to him helping to pay the bills. I started to dry out. My eyes became dull, and my flesh became cold, and my bones became brittle. And every day there was less and less of me and my pesky desires. But one day I was working on my computer and I reached for something, surely not a glass of wine by this point, and my breast pressed up against the table and it hurt a bit, so I brushed my hand over it and there was a lump. Not a, is that a lump? It was a definitive lump. Now, that lump has many of its own stories to tell, but its origin story is that it woke me out of a very bad dream. And it was like that lump slapped me hard across the face and said, "What the fuck are you doing? We are getting out of here." And that lump was the best and last teacher I will ever have, because it reminded me what I already knew before, that life is not quiet or still or empty. It's a rush of birthing and sexing and dying, exploding eruptions of crashing, lapping, watery moans, sighs and wails, screaming in the bloody blossoming, devouring, fleshy hunger, flight of feathery tickling, giggling, rolling down the hill, and getting very dirty, and everything in it is made of desire. Thank you.